Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm delighted to be here with all of you today, and especially to be joined by Katherine Stewart, Head of Impact Research, Policy and Insight at the Economist Impact.
Thank you, and it's so nice to be here with you.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Laura Bonamici, and I'm the Global Head of Marketing at Fujitsu. Today's session has a very clear purpose. We are here to introduce you to our Changemakers series, a joint initiative between Fujitsu and the Economist. Changemakers shines a spotlight on leaders who are driving the transformation to become net positive organizations. And what I love most about this series is that it's not just about strategies or frameworks, it's about real impact. These leaders are not only setting ambitious goals, they're actually delivering results. They're showing us what's possible when you balance commercial success with social environmental progress. So our purpose with the Changemakers series is very simple. The first is to highlight inspiring leadership in the net positive space. Secondly, to recognize our customers and partners who are leading the way. And finally, to celebrate that positive change is possible. So Katherine, before we dive in, have I missed anything you would like to add?
No, but I think it's an amazing moment to think about as the world changes. What does successful business look like, and how do you balance moving forward financially with moving the world forward in terms of social, environmental, economic progress? And so I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Great. Perhaps shall we start with defining net positive for our audience who are not familiar with this concept? Would you like to give us your definition of net positive?
Absolutely. So a net positive company is one that seeks to generate more positive outcomes in the world than it takes away or creates negative outcomes. It is really a business approach that was defined by Paul Pullman back when he was the CEO of Unilever in the early 2000s. And what we have started to see over time is a lot of companies are interested in minimizing their footprint. So the concept of net zero is one we're all going to be very familiar with. It was a big push point during the 2010s and into the first part of this decade. But this idea that actually you have the opportunity beyond just corporate social responsibility to be able to generate positive outcomes as a business that impact the societies you work in is something that's a little bit newer. And I think it's something that you at Fujitsu have been really interested in thinking through. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And perhaps for those in the audience who don't know us, maybe a good starting point is our own vision, right? So we've set a very, very bold vision. We want to become a technology company that realizes net positive by 2030. Not long now, we're in 2025. So we know that this is ambitious, but it also reflects both our responsibility, if you like, and our opportunity, because as a technology company, we know that technology can and must play a huge role in helping organizations and societies transition. Importantly, we're not just focused on our own journey. Obviously, we've got our own KPIs, but we're also here to support our customers and partners as they move towards net positive themselves. And that's why the research behind the net positive index, the work that we've done with you, is so powerful. Perhaps let me share one finding that really struck me. Only 4% of companies today treat financial, environmental, and social performance as equal. So only 4%. But our index and the research that we've done shows that it is possible to prioritize all three and still remain competitive, which is, I think, the anxiety, the fear that most organizations have. So what would you say is how would you explain that tension between ambition and action?
I think it's what happens in the boardroom, right? So you have a lot of organizations, people who are responsible for what has typically been deemed the soft side of business. So, your chief sustainability officers. And what they do is seen as a cost. That perception, though, isn't right. And I think the innovation that has to come out of a role like the chief sustainability role or the chief innovation role or even the chief human resources role, the people who can be responsible for driving this change, we need to be able to show that there's a return on investment for companies that are taking these first steps. And I think we're starting to see that. And so you see that there's more investor confidence, there's equal market share, they're not falling any further behind. But what we want to do over time is give those people who are driving the net positive approach the hard facts and figures. That means when they take this to a CFO or a CEO, they automatically see, oh, this is how we get ROI from this investment. And you understand that resources are limited in a business. You have to prioritize where you invest. There's not a ton of appetite in most businesses for something that looks like it's a huge cost and isn't generating that ROI. However, more and more, the companies that are letting the so-called soft C-suite to the table, listening to their financial arguments, are the ones that are driving forward and building resilience in a business world that is complex, a little bit volatile, one might say. And I say that kind of speaking as an American who's watching what's happening from my side of the world. And then also in one that there's kind of a flip-flopping on issues that have traditionally been kind of considered the soft space. And so what I think we have is, until we get, you need to build resilience. You need to find ways that keep your business stable and generate that ROI. And a lot of those are actually from these much more net positive operations. So good supply chain management, keeping employees, really good employees, happy so that you retain them, looking for efficiencies. There's so much to gain from taking that net positive approach.
Absolutely, and I love that you've already touched on the people side. So you were mentioning some of the roles, the chief sustainability officer, the chief innovation officer, the chief people officer, and it's interesting that we're talking about these roles, and we use the word soft. So perhaps soft is the new impactful. Maybe that's the way we should be looking at these roles. But I like the fact that you touched already on the people driving transformation, because ultimately Changemakers is exactly about that, about the people side, not just the theoretical side, not just the data. And the agenda that we're driving and the work that we've done with Economist Impact is got three parts. We've got the research, which is solid, which gives us the data point. We've got the index, which gives us some tools to see where companies are on the journey. And then the third element, the one that we would like to introduce today, is the change makers. So the people, the real people behind all this work. So there's an industry and a market lens. There's a more kind of a specific company lens, and then there's the people. And I said at the beginning, I'm very excited because obviously I'm in marketing, so I know that authenticity is ultimately what really resonate with all of our audiences. And the Changemaker series was really created to make this real and human. So we wanted to put a face and a name to the movement, not just talk theoretical stories. So leaders that are not just talking about the transformation, but actually delivering measurable results. And perhaps I'll give you two examples. The two that we've got live already. There will be more to come. And the first one is from Japan, where I'm based. And the change maker that we are spotlighting is Harunobu Nagase, who's the corporate planning director at Yamato Transport Limited. And for those of you who are familiar, obviously this is a company that operates here in Japan. Everybody knows them. Great logo, that everybody loves. And Harunobu has done something very special because it's launched a truly transformative initiative for the Japan's logistics sector. It's focused on cross-industry collaboration and data sharing. So it's creating an open share freight platform where trucks from different companies, even competitors, can swap loads at highway stops, which is a smart collaboration that cuts emissions, eases driver shortage, which in turn, responds to the challenges of an aging society, which, as we all know, is a big issue here in Japan. And what makes him a true change maker is not just optimizing, the operation for Yamato, for his company. It is actually reshaping with this program an entire industry model, because they've turned what potentially could be a national crisis into new and more sustainable ways forward. And actually one that others around the world are now watching very, very closely. Another inspiring example, and I'm going to move to your geography now, Katherine, is a leading European energy company under the leadership of their CEO, Anna Borg. So we're moving to Sweden now, the other side of the world from me. And under Anna's leadership, Vattenfall has integrated sustainability into its core business strategy. She knew that new employees often said that they joined because the companies combined a clear sense of purpose with solid business strategy. So she ensured that when it came to sustainability, it wasn't just a side project, but it was actually built into scorecards, into incentive, into investment criteria, to the point that every new project must prove that it's both profitable and sustainable. And again, what makes a true change maker is our ambition to go beyond net zero. So Vattenfall, like many other companies, is targeting net zero. Their timeline is 2040. So that in itself wouldn't be unique. Many of us are on that journey, but they're also pushing into that net positive outcomes in areas like biodiversity, community impact. So they belong to that group that you highlighted a minute ago of companies that are really pushing more towards going beyond net zero. So they're redefining what good business looks like, showing that long-term competitiveness actually comes from aligning profit with purpose. So again, these stories are not theoreticals. They show courageous leadership, delivering really meaningful and systemic change. And again, they remind us that net positive isn't just possible, it's actually happening. So as you can see, I get very excited about these stories. And I know you've been very close to many of this conversation. So what stood out for you as you started talking to some of these inspirational leaders?
I think the most interesting part is they're all in different roles. They all wear different hats within an organization. And so I think there's a perception that all change needs to be led exactly from the top. And obviously, Anna has done that, but I do not think that that is necessarily correct. There are champions of net positive everywhere in an organization. And so and even Anna was showcasing how within her business, she needed advocates to come along the way with her in order to drive successful change. And to me, that really embodies what we're trying to do with this Changemakers program, is to showcase how starting with one or two advocates for transformation within an organization, irrespective of where they sit, because net positive is such a broad concept and it really has so many facets that you can use as the first lever, means that you can start to drive that ripple through impact that allows for much wider scale change. So that's really been, for me, the takeaway from these Changemaker profiles. And as we continue this this part of the program together, I'm really interested to see how our other Changemakers that we've identified and will be showcasing reinforce that you can come from any aspect. You can focus in on one small thing, and that can start the ball rolling and send all the bowling pins down in a few years' time, or even quite quickly.
Absolutely, I completely agree, and it's interesting actually, because I think sometimes we are too focused on the big wow moments, on the big splash that we can make, and actually it's the ripple effect that we create with initiatives like the Yamato one, for example. They in the end make the biggest impact and biggest difference.
Change is slow, right? And right, it doesn't happen overnight. The tools that you can invest in, you can start to learn about them, and you can invest in them fairly quickly, or the behavioral shifts can start fairly quickly, but the amount of time it takes to actually kind of input throughout an organization can take quite a while. And so I don't think people should be discouraged by a little bit of progress, chipping away at the blocks, so to speak, and finding, maybe collecting the right data and having access to the tools you need to understand that data means that you've started the journey, and that will allow you to come up with a plan for subsequent change. So I want to encourage people to if they can, only start small, and not to prevent them from starting at all.
I couldn't agree more, and I really like your point about leadership coming from different angles, from different levels of the organization, because sometimes there's a tendency to look up or rely on decision makers, and of course, in many cases, they do have the ultimate say on what moves forward in an organization, but I find that ecosystem is so much broader. Though you've got the people influencing the decision makers, you've got the visionary ones that come up with the crazy ideas, and then suddenly they open new possibilities. You've got the new generations. We know certainly from our own experience that we've got a whole new Gen Z population that is quickly growing up, and with very different expectations, and holding us accountable for some of the decisions that the company is taking.
And I think that's what the Advancing Net Positive agenda that we've built together is all about. It's about giving people who want to go have these communications with their executives who are going to make final decisions, the tools they need to be able to communicate and say, here is what I think we should do. Here is why I think we should do it. Here's an example of how it's already been done. And here's what the ultimate benefit could be for our organization if we start on this journey. And I hope that as people explore what we've put together and what we're continuing to build, they will get more and more access to the information they need to have those conversations, because it can be hard. We understand that, but I think it can be very rewarding.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Right, as we wrap up, I'll share some final thoughts from my side, and then I'll invite you to do the same. So for me, the first thing is that net positive is not a buzzword. It's definitely a business imperative. And the second point is that even if the journey is not easy, the index, certainly the journey that we've gone through so far, has shown us that there is a long way to go, but also with the change makers, we're learning that it is possible, and there are some really healthy shoots that we're starting to see everywhere in the world across all industries, despite some of the challenges in the very volatile markets and the environments in which we operate. And the third point perhaps is that and you touched on this, is that this is just the beginning. So there will be, we've certainly unearthed more change makers. We'll be sharing them with our audiences. We'll announce them in the coming months, and I'm hoping that these inspiring stories will do what you're describing, to just plant the seed and just help others to do that. So I don't know if there's any final messages that you would like to share before we close the webinar.
No, but I hope this starts the conversation around this role of business as a positive contributor to society and environments, and so that organizations see Fujitsu, the Changemakers, Economist Impact as a place to turn as they want to go on this journey. So I hope that they feel like they have allies, because that's what we're here to be. We're here to provide some tidbits and some encouragement as the journey proceeds.
Great, yeah, and maybe instill a little bit of confidence that it is possible, right? That we're seeing enough examples of that. Katherine, thank you so much for spending time with us today and for your insights. I really enjoyed the conversation with you. For all of the people who are listening and watching us online, if you'd like to explore more, I invite you to visit the Advancing Net Positive Agenda Hub, where you will find the index, the assessment tool, and of course, the Changemaker series that we've just launched. So let's keep learning, let's keep challenging ourselves, and let's keep pushing for a truly net positive future. So before we close this webinar, we'll be looking at your comments and answering all of your questions live. So thanks again, and see you next time.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Katherine.